There's a lot that we don't talk about, sometimes due to embarrassment, fear, insecurities. We neglect discussions about the most common parts of our lives, things we all deal with, sometimes every day. But on the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast, together, we'll break all of those taboos and talk open and honest about shared experiences. Knowledgeable people relating things you felt but never put into words. Parenting, sex, fitness, energy, anything to connect you to your authentic self, unfiltered. Now, the Caffeinated Gypsy herself, a free spirit, world traveler with a passion for fitness and exploring topics that others might avoid. Hello and welcome to the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast. I'm Stephanie Cotton, your host. Thank you all so much for being with me today so we can talk about the full moon. It's a really good moon, you guys. I know that it's Mercury retrograde and it's been a little bit crazy, but this is actually a really good full moon. I'm excited to tell you guys all of the details about this. Let's talk about things that are going on though. Let's do some updates because it's been a minute since I did a podcast. We are full-fledged coffee. I don't know what it is, but anytime we get into cooler weather, I feel like I'm maybe a bigger coffee addict than normal. And I don't even know how that's possible. But actually, I take that back a little bit. So I really like hot drinks. I think that's what it is. Me and my husband were actually talking about this last night because I can't drink coffee at night. I'm actually really sensitive to caffeine, which is kind of cruel. So we do a lot more tea at night, and we've been drinking a ton of tea. So when I tell you guys I'm going to do tea eventually, I'm not joking because I really do love tea. Tea is really like my jam in the winter at night because I can't drink coffee. If I had my preference, it would definitely be coffee, but tea is like up there, you guys. So I'm like, oh my God, my brain's like all over the place with coffee right now. And we're doing some really cool stuff. If you have not had a chance to check out my recent article I did a really yummy recipe for you guys. It is a rose cardamom crystal charged latte with a whiskey cream, and it is probably one of my favorite coffee recipes I've ever done. So I'm going to back up and give you guys a little backstory on me. So when I lived in California, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was like hardcore into like paleo and cooking and stuff like that. And I used to do like these paleo cooking classes, and I had a food blog. So I used to do recipes all the time, but it was usually like paleo stuff. So I got really good at writing recipes, and especially coffee recipes, because I was always looking for like the yummiest coffee recipe that didn't include dairy at the time. So I got really good with making coffee recipes. So I'm trying to get back to that just a little bit for you guys because it's really fun, and I like to share all the stuff I'm doing, especially the benefits of it. So if you go on the article, I'll list some of the benefits. Also check out my posts because sometimes I'll sneak stuff in there just to tell you the magical benefits or the metaphysical benefits of things I use, because I'm always like, what can I do in here that would make this like extra magical? So when you're working with especially spices and stuff, there's always going to be some sort of magical property. So anyhow, go check that out on my blog. You're going to love it. And if you haven't signed up yet, go sign up for the Zodiac Coffee of the Month subscription. You guys, it's awesome because it's all curated each month for the Zodiac season. So the next one coming up is going to be Sagittarius, and the date to get that in, to get your order in, is the 23rd. Those mail out around the 25th so that you can have it for the month. So it's going to be really good. I also have some fun stuff coming up for, I'm not like a big Black Friday sale kind of person, but being in a retail sort of like business with that kind of stuff, you have to be a little bit competitive. So I do have some fun stuff for that. Obviously, as a small business, it's not going to be anything crazy, but I am going to be offering some things that I don't normally offer as far as like stuff for stocking stuffers and stuff like that. So if you want to check those out, pay attention to my social media. Trying to think what else is going on. If you have not noticed, I have tried to shift my social media just a little bit. I think I've mentioned this in a couple of my podcasts. I'm like so frustrated with Instagram right now. I worked really hard on my account for a couple years, and they changed all the algorithms, and it really messed with everything. So it just gave me the opportunity to take a step back and think about how I was running my business. So I'm trying to spend a lot more time just pinning stuff on Pinterest and things like that. So if you don't follow me on Pinterest, go follow me on Pinterest, because I'm always pinning like really cool stuff and creating pins like crystal stuff, coffee stuff, astrology stuff. So follow me on Pinterest, Caffeinated Gypsy. I actually like Pinterest a little bit more than Instagram. Instagram, I have shifted most of my coffee stuff over to a separate Instagram account. Not that I'm not going to post coffee stuff on my regular site, but I was trying to move that over just a little bit. So if you're like, I only want to follow coffee stuff, you can do that. I'm just trying to separate my businesses out just a little bit. So if you want to follow all the coffee stuff, you can go to Coffee Crystals. Was it? I always forget. It's Coffee and Crystals Coffee. If you go on to my regular Instagram, if you're already following that, you can find those tags on there, because you always have to make it like a certain way on Instagram, because everybody already has your name like all the time, right? But if you just want to follow coffee, go check that out. And I have something really cool to share with you guys. I don't know if you saw my Instagram post. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, because I've been slack on all of that stuff. I got this really cool Zodiac mug from this lady who does ceramics. She does these like personalized Zodiac mugs. Her name is I'm gonna make sure I say this right. Suzaluna is her account. And it's really cool because you just give her your information and she creates this like Zodiac mug just for you. So I got my own Aquarius mug and it has my birthday on it. It has my name on it and it's really freaking cool. And she was super sweet. She offered to give you guys a discount. So if you want to check her out, her Instagram account is Suzaluna. So it's Suzaluna, Suzaluna, and I will go ahead and put a link in the show notes for you guys. But she's going to give you guys 10% off if you want to get one. All you have to do is put in the code Gypsy10, and I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. So if you want to go snag your own Zodiac mug, because you can never have too many of those, that would be a really cool present for yourself or for somebody else over the holidays. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I know everybody's going to want to grab one, because I love mine. I drink my coffee out of it like every day now. There's just something about having a personalized Zodiac mug. I don't know. It just makes me feel like extra special. So thank you for that. And if you have not had a chance, you can go hang out with us on Patreon and get all of the Zodiac updates. If you haven't noticed, I've shifted from doing that on Instagram, and that's all for Patreon members. And there's lots of different levels to Patreon. And honestly, guys, this is like the best way to help support the podcast, and it gives us the opportunity to like connect a little bit more intimately. So if you love the podcast and you love like Astro stuff, that's a really good place to go do that. There's a lot of different ways you can be a part of the Patreon. There's a lot of different levels to it. So go check that out. If you go on Patreon, go to Caffeinated Gypsy, or if you go on my website, caffeinatedgypsy.com, you can get the link to that and come hang out with us and get to see my beautiful face every morning, because I do an update on there every single day almost during the week. So come hang out with us. It'll be fun. Speaking of Astro, let's talk about the moon. So we are in a full moon in Taurus. It's actually today. And it's a good moon, you guys. I know some of these moons have been kind of crazy, but I think this is like a really welcomed break, especially being in the midst of Mercury in retrograde. This moon is a good one. There's a lot of really good aspects to this. Even though it looks like, if you looked at just from the Mercury in retrograde perspective, it looks like it could be a very challenging moon. It's actually a really good moon. So just to recap, when we're working with full moon energy, what we're really seeing is a focus on intimate relationships. And what we're really looking at too is how do we need to tweak these relationships versus like our everyday things? So how do these things conflict? So how do our relationships conflict with maybe, our jobs, our everyday life? What things need to shift so that we are able to, live the life we're meant to live or live up to our full potential? So with it being in Taurus, we're definitely seeing this emphasis on our close relationships with the people, like our spouses and our really good friends and things like that. There's some interesting aspects to this, though, that I think are really going to be helpful to everybody right now, especially as we've gone through so many massive changes this last year. And the first one is that Saturn is trine with the full moon. And so normally when we talk about Saturn, everybody's like, oh, Saturn, right? It's that maleficent planet. And we're always like, it always brings the badness. Well, with this aspect is actually really good. You know, a lot of times when I talk about your emotions during the full moon, I'm kind of like, hold off. Maybe don't trust it as much, because we have such an amplified energy, and it can be, you know, sometimes not always accurate. But this is one of those moons where I'm like, oh my gosh, pay attention to everything you're feeling, because it's going to be on point. So with Saturn trining this full moon, it's really going to give us an emotional strength. So as we are, you know, releasing, because that's what we do with full moons, right? We let go of what's not working for us. And this is usually in terms of like emotional things, especially when it comes close to our relationships. And so with this, it's really going to give us the emotional strength to let go of whatever isn't working for us. And when we're looking at Taurus, you know, Taurus is, a lot of times we're talking about our self-worth. And so I always like to look at it like this. What relationships are maybe not supporting me in the way I need to be supported, or maybe aren't beneficial for me right now? And so this is the time when we start to think about releasing this stuff. And with Saturn in the mix, it's going to give us reliability. It's going to give us really accurate instincts. And this is really, really important right now, because as you think about letting go of things, the last thing you want is to make decisions that maybe you're going to regret later. So, but with Saturn in the mix, you guys, it's like, trust your instincts. Whatever your gut is telling you, go with that right now. The other thing that Saturn's doing with this full moon is it's really giving you patience. So it's not that knee-jerk reaction that we may have had with some of the other moons or some of the other placements that we've seen over the past year. Saturn's really going to help you take a step back and go, okay, like, what do I need to do that's going to be beneficial for the long term? So it's trusting yourself, but also like being able to lay out a plan. So this is something I think is really going to be helpful right now. And I think with all the other things that are going on with Mercury in retrograde, and we've also got the full moon opposite Mercury, you know, communication is huge right now. There's a huge emphasis on this. And if we didn't have some of these other aspects, I would be like, this is like a fucking nightmare right now. But, you know, with Mercury opposite the sun right now, the sun and the moon, we could really be looking at a communication nightmare. But with things like Saturn, and we're going to talk about Neptune in just a second, kind of stepping in, it's really helping to balance all this out and bring some structure to this. So this is a really good thing, especially if you've been going through kind of a communication nightmare lately. This is going to give you a little bit of a break. The other aspect to this that's super helpful is the full moon is sextile with Neptune. So I love to talk about Neptune because I feel like Neptune's it's like a really fun planet to talk about. But there's a lot of confusion around Neptune, which makes sense because it's a confusing planet. But with this particular aspect, it's going to heighten our senses. So if you remember anything about Neptune, Neptune is that planet that gives us our ability to really tap into our higher self. But it's also kind of a gassy planet. Like, it makes things a little bit confusing. But with an aspect like this, it's actually working in our benefit. And it's going to give us very heightened sensitivity to all of our psychic abilities. It's also going to allow us to really feel into things. So if you are one of those people who are empathic, or you're psychic, or you're clairvoyant, or, you know, one of the other, you know, abilities that you might have, this is a good time for that. This is one of those times where I'm like, meditate, journal, pay attention to what you're feeling, trust yourself. Especially in terms of relationships. So if you're getting these feelings, or you're like, oh, I get this sense that something's not right, this is it. Like, trust that right now. I also wanted to mention, we've also got the full moon trine with Pluto. So whenever that happens, it's also going to intensify our feelings and our emotions. So we're looking at it being very, very amplified, but in a way that we can actually like trust it and go with it. It's not going to be that like delusional amplification of energy that we see sometimes, where it's like super, super heightened and we can't really trust it. This is one of those times, because we got Saturn in the mix, it's really going to help balance and even everything out. I did want to mention that this is going to be a really good time if you are trying to really hone in on like your intuition or your psychic abilities and things like that. This is one of those times you really want to work on that. So what can you do? These are times where I always encourage you lucid dreaming. So if you have been working on dream work, or if you haven't and you have psychic abilities, a lot of times this comes through your dreams. So lucid dreaming is a great way to start getting information. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. You could do meditations right before you go to sleep. There's tons on YouTube to help with lucid dreaming. There's herbs you can take. Mexican dream herb is an herb that I've worked with for years that really helps with lucid dreaming. You drink it right before you go to sleep and you have very vivid dreams. And then as soon as you wake up, you write everything down. Because a lot of times we really only have seconds once we wake up to recall everything. And if we don't start writing it down, we lose that. But that's where we get a lot of information. This is also meditation's key, you guys. I can't tell you how much I emphasize this with people because it allows us to start separating from our physical body. So meditation, like 10 to 15 minutes a day is really going to help. This is one of those times where I'm like, go into your meditation and try to connect with your guides. That's a great way to start trying to really open up your third eye and tapping into these things. The other thing you could do is just play little games with yourself. Like I like to hold like pictures and be like, see if I can sense anything. I like to hold objects. I just start to walk into like a grocery store and pay attention. Like, what do I feel? And that's a really good way to just start trusting those intuitions, those instincts that are coming up, because a lot of times we're so overly stimulated throughout the day that we're not even sure like what's ours, what somebody else's. And if we haven't learned how to really protect our energy and ground, we're going to be picking up on all kinds of stuff. So I like to take the time when, especially when the energy is like this, and just be like, okay, I'm just going to focus on one thing. And that's a really good way to start building up some of those, psychic abilities, or if you're empathic, it's a really great way to start working on that kind of stuff. So great full moon to do that. Also, journaling is really good. I like to do automatic journaling. And this is where I just sit down and I almost do like a meditation. I get myself nice and calm, and then I just start trying to tap into energy. So I might be like, okay, I'm going to tap into like my spirit guides, and I just write and see what comes out. So that's another really great thing to do. Play around with it, you guys. There's no wrong way to do this, but definitely a prime moon if you're working through trying to connect with those abilities. So some other things that we have going on right now is Saturn is sextiled with Neptune. So this is going to be a really good time to gain financially from spiritual endeavors. So if you have, a spiritual business or something like that, this is going to be a really good time to start actually making money from those things. It's also going to give you some practicality behind that. So if you're one of those people, you're like, maybe you don't always look at things practical, or you have a hard time deciphering between what's real and what's not real in your business. Especially, I find that that's very easy to have happen when you have a spiritual business of any kind, any entrepreneurs, but especially spiritual businesses. Everything is kind of blurry sometimes. But with Saturn's practicality. So this is going to allow you to be very practical about your business. Like, what is realistic? What can you actually do? What kind of money can you actually make? What are realistic goals? Now is a really good time to start setting those goals for your business. I think as a spiritual entrepreneur, it's really easy to just be like, I just want to do the work. But if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, you still have to treat it like a business. You still need to have goals. You still need to have those bottom lines, things like that. So this is a good time to sit down and start looking at like, what do you need to be financially successful? What are realistic goals? And start, paving out your plan for this next year. And we also we talked about Pluto already. Oh, Mars is sextile with Jupiter. This is a fun one, you guys. So Mars is all of that energy and drive, and Jupiter is expansion and good luck. So this is a really good time also for anything to do with business, anything to do with sex, anything to do with sports. You're going to have a lot of drive behind that. So really, this is the moon, you guys. If you want to set some goals for this new moon coming up after this, now's the time to start letting go and being like, okay, I'm going to let go of whatever's not working for me right now, because the new moon's coming up in a few weeks, and I want to set some goals to really amp things up for this next year for myself. this is the time to do it. The energy is prime, you guys. This is a great moon. Like, I can't tell you, like, enjoy this energy right now. I know Mercury retrograde is kind of like, ugh, we just came out of Scorpio, but this is like a moon where you should be feeling really good right now. And it's going to allow you to let go of things, but not feel that sort of like dread that we felt in the past. So let's write stuff down tonight. Let's let stuff go. Start really tapping into your higher self. You guys, we're really evolving right now as people, and it's really important that we're following our instincts and tapping into our higher self, tapping into our abilities. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me in the last month and just been like, I really want to like get a grasp of my abilities. And I think that's because we're just feeling this push to like change and grow and evolve as a species. And you know, we all are understanding the only way to do that is to tap into this higher level of ourself that maybe we haven't accessed. And we've all been doing so much work, right? Like so much healing over the last few years. And we're finally kind of like, okay, like I can really step into my true self now because we've been doing all of this work. So not that there isn't work to do, but I feel like this is one of those moons where we can be like, yeah, like let's do this. Let's tap into ourselves. So let's do this, guys. Let's have a great full moon. And as always, make sure you hit up my Instagram or my website if you want to get any more astro updates. Head over to Patreon because that's where they're all at. And until the next one, you guys.